Tourette's podcast is not a medical advice show. It's a show about experiences. In the course of that, we may talk about medications or therapies or stories from the doctor's office, but don't mistake any of that for medical advice or direction. It's not. Get that only from people or places licensed or certified to give it, not from a massively fun and action-packed podcast about our life experiences. Such as?
I've had one-on-one meetings with cabinet secretaries, and I still wonder how the hell did I get where I am.
This is Tourette's podcast, made possible with support of the Tourette Association of America and part of the Geeks Rising Network. Hey everybody, it's Ben. Happy New Year, and I want to start here by saying we've got winners in our random drawing. Among hundreds of entrants are two winners who I've messaged on Facebook, and I want to wait for them to accept before I say their names here. But as of now, tentatively, we've got two winners in our giveaway of portraits drawn by artist Elizabeth McDonald, who posts amazing stuff on her Instagram, including recently a series of portraits of Tourette advocates. I posted the one she did of me just recently at tourettespodcast.com along with the details about this giveaway, which, as of now, is tentatively, I don't like that word. We think we have winners, and I'll announce them when they accept, and who knows, if something happens and we can't get through to any of the winners, we'll just have to draw another name. At any rate, I can't wait to see the results. Elizabeth is an awesome portrait artist. You can check her out on Instagram. The handle is spelled P-E-Y-E-R-A-T-E. Thanks to her for partnering with Tourette's podcast for a cool giveaway, and I'd like to keep doing these, if we can, these giveaways of things created by the Tourette community, or things created for the Tourette community. Speaking of, Sophia ran some numbers from the Tourette's podcast discussion group on Facebook. Go over and join it, by all means, no matter who you are. If you're sincere about your interest in Tourette syndrome, or if you have it, or if you know somebody who does and you want to understand them better, or maybe you think you might have Tourette syndrome yourself, but you're not sure, you just have some questions for the community, join the Tourette's podcast discussion group on Facebook. It's a closed group, remember, so you have to answer some questions on the way in so we know that you're not a bot or a troll. So we answered those really easy questions and then you're into the group. So anyway, Sophia ran these numbers about the group and what's happened over the year. And one thing I can say is the discussion group represents a fraction of the total listenership, which is awesome week to week. And the best part of this group is that it's super communicative and engaged, and people emailing to check in and say, hey, and it's really changed my life. Okay, well, the numbers from the discussion group, this activity is from 2019. 226 new members, 1,456 comments, 4,443 reactions. Friday is the most popular day of activity for the group, which coincides with the release of episodes, and membership spans across 10 countries. Here's a message from Sophia, our wonderful admin. She says, "Thank you all for your continued support of the podcast and the group. Wishing you the very best for 2020. End quote. That's awesome. Thank you, Sophia. And thanks everyone for being a part of this. It's still growing. It's increasingly fun. If you're not part of the discussion group or maybe aren't interested but still want to communicate, you can email me, working on my pronunciations. Email me at tourettespodcast@gmail.com. So I've noticed in different Tourette groups and forums, more people than I think I usually see posting about tics getting more severe in their adulthood. Like contrary to what you hear about tics fading away, with some people they'll really pick up kind of randomly out of nowhere. And it's a new thing to deal with in your adult life. Like you had tics when you were a kid and then they just kind of went away, then all of a sudden, bam, they're back. We've heard from people like that. And so it's great to have these communities and online groups of people that you can open up with and throw your challenges to so they can help you through it. And of course, some people in that group may have direct experience with the subject or challenge that you're trying to address. And that's actually pretty common. And this is all to say that it's in everybody's interest to have a diverse Rolodex so you can have better perspective around you and access to different viewpoints. For the most part, the people we've heard from on the podcast have been roughly, my age, late 30s or younger. Maybe going through school or getting into their careers or still kind of developing their careers as those things go these days. But I don't think we've heard from enough senior leadership on the podcast, and I mean that in a very direct way. Our guest this week is Jerry, and without getting specific, he's a high-ranking official in the United States federal government. That is to say, a position of huge responsibility while managing Tourette syndrome, as an adult, as a boss in a sharply cut field of work. And it's also to say he's really worth listening to if you're a boss or a human resources manager, and you'd like to learn more about the neurodiversity perspective and how uniformity for all employees might not be the right idea. Jerry's totally worth listening to on this. He gets into his style of leadership here. And you might even wish he was your boss, the way he expresses his understanding via his experience and enhanced sense of empathy. Side note, my boss at my day job, Kristen, is a champion in this area, which is massively appreciated. Back to Jerry, this is also to say that he's of a generation where, when he became aware of his tics at a young age, it wasn't under the name Tourette Syndrome. I mean, that existed, but it wasn't apparent back in his youth. There wasn't a whole lot of awareness at the time. And the story of him coming to know it as Tourette Syndrome, which he realized in his adult life, is really powerful, really human, and he reminds us that an increase in Tourette-related activity in adulthood isn't just limited to a rise in tics. It can be really heavy things like anxiety and so on. Jerry, from his position, gives a lot of encouragement to blast through it with the help of your community. He also has me laughing at many points throughout this conversation. Just some really great stories from his life here. This is me and Jerry.
I'm Jerry, and I live in Arlington, Virginia. I work for the federal government. I'm a Native American. I'm a citizen of the Sault Ste. Marie Chippewa tribe from Michigan, and married with 2 daughters. So that's who I am.
So, federal official, so you're in a position of responsibility, as far as I can remember. I mean, you've had some supervisory roles, and how have TS and your professional career kind of interacted?
So I am a member of the Senior Executive Service, which is the tier at the very top of the federal pyramid. So if there's 2 million federal employees, there's about 7,000 or so, 8,000 members of the Senior Executive Service. And typically office directors, bureau directors. I'm essentially a bureau director in the federal government. And I don't say that to brag. I kind of wonder every day how the hell I got to this level. But I am in my 18th year as a senior executive. It has had a hell of a lot of up and downs, I'll tell you that. But I am still there. And as far as I know, I'm one of the highest ranking career federal officials in the entire federal government with Tourette's. Obviously, I don't know all the other 7,000 senior executives, but
you haven't done a Tourette census or anything yet.
Yeah, I haven't done that. But of the ones I know, there's nobody who who is out as having Tourette's or clearly seems to have it. So, and until somebody else comes out of the woodwork, and I claim the mantle of being the highest ranking federal official with Tourette Syndrome. So if there's anybody out there who wants to join me, then that's great. But I really just kind of recently came to that realization that I probably am. And that's kind of mind-blowing in a way. And I'm really still trying to figure out, like, how can I use that platform to help other people with TS. If there's 2 million civilian federal employees, if we use a 1% number, my math is right. That's like, I'm on vacation, not doing math. We can do the math. It's quite a few people in the federal government with Tourette syndrome, and I would bet some of them are struggling. So I just want to be a voice to say, you can get to these positions and you can succeed in these positions. It hasn't always been easy. And, I'm in the kind of job where I work directly for political leaders. Yeah. And they come and go relatively quickly. And, I've been in the current department I've been there 21 years. I've had 23 bosses, and that's 21 years. And so that means like every 18 months, every 5 days, like whatever it is, you got to reintroduce yourself to your supervisors and to some new people coming in who maybe you've never met before, but suddenly they're your boss. And so you have to, I always cringe a little because, I always know, okay, so I've got to either ignore or talk about with my new boss, whoever that is, the fact that I have Tourette Syndrome. And I've been really lucky overall those years. I've really had only one or two supervisors for whom that was an issue, and most have just not cared.
Huh. Well, yeah, I guess after, that many bosses, at some point you're pretty practiced in kind of giving them the pitch of, here's something about me, and, maybe encapsulating it in a way that's easy to digest. But when it becomes a problem, what kind of objections were raised in those situations, if you can talk about that?
Oh, yeah. And there's just one assistant secretary in particular who was heard to say to somebody, he didn't say to me, but word got back, of course, said, I'd have some potential if I didn't stutter. And I really don't stutter, but I do. One of my tics is sometimes a little stutter breath before I talk. Which I'm sure is annoying to listen to. So it's just, just things like that, So this person who, I'm not going to identify, of course, but just kind of thought worse of me for that. And in fact, moved me out of the job I was in. And whether it's because of that or other things, I don't know. I mean, it's pretty common when you're a career official in these higher positions reporting to the political leadership.
Right.
It's pretty common to get moved when a new team comes in. So, there's no way to really correlate that to the Tourette's, but this, and most people have been fine with it, but this one person for sure was not, and wasn't the first time or the last time I was moved. So that just kind of goes with the gig when you're at that level in the federal government.
Was there ever a question in your mind as to whether, I mean, you said, things, you've had some hard times and ups and downs, but kind of going back early, some people with TS pretty commonly have, confidence issues and some hesitancy to kind of be in public and kind of put themselves in a situation where they might feel vulnerable. And that makes them question kind of everything they can do in terms of their, abilities on the job. And, did you ever kind of run through that? And was that ever maybe a substantial exercise in your head?
Yeah, I'd say that's kind of something playing in the background, even today. Because I started ticking when I was 9, and I wasn't diagnosed until I was 45. So I went through a large share of my adult life. I'm 59 now. So I went through a large share of my adult life ticking, not knowing what it was. Yeah. And I think actually in my 20s and early 30s, I probably wasn't ticking as much. And I think it's gotten a lot worse since then. So I don't know. I just kind of did what I was doing. And I honestly just sort of ignored the fact that I had it. I mean, obviously I'd be ticking, and obviously people would see me ticking, but I really, positions I've had, I give keynote addresses to 1,000 people. I never gave a shit. I just did it. And I got bullied a lot as a kid, and even up through college. And, obviously I don't recommend that for anyone, or don't condone that. But it really did get me to the point over the years where the shell around my emotions could withstand a nuclear missile. I mean, there's nothing you could say that's going to hurt my feelings at this point.
Yeah.
Because I heard it all.
Right. Yeah.
On the third grade playground, and again, not wishing bullying on anybody.
Of course.
There's much better ways to get acceptance of Tourette's and 100 other conditions, but honestly, you know, by the time I got diagnosed, you know, I had a wife, I had kids, I had friends, you know. So if you come across the one person who's going to be an ass about it, it's like, you know, you don't know what you're talking about, and just says it says so much more about them than it says about me. But you know, leadership being what it is, I'm sure I have you know, comrades out there in the federal government who have TS or various comorbids and are having a hard time with that. So yeah, I just put an offer out there. So you'll put the link to some of my contact information in the program or the episode notes. But
for sure,
you know, it's kind of an open invitation, and I'm on the podcast Facebook group. You know, anybody who wants to reach out, you know, particularly in the federal government, but anywhere, I'm happy to give my advice or my experiences. I mean, everybody's different. I can't probably solve people's problems, but I can, I guess, tell them what I did and lend an ear anyway.
Yeah. And it's nice to at least, you know, if you can establish, you know, just kind of a group that exists, you know, sometimes just that alone, you know, kind of makes you feel a little bit better. You mentioned by the time you got diagnosed, you were married, had kids and everything, but, you know, you kind of had things going on from when you were younger. It wasn't like, you know, your diagnosis and occurrence, you know, were at the same time. What were the dynamics that what was the gulf between, you know, kind of you understanding yourself, but then getting diagnosed later on?
Well, it's kind of a humorous story in a way. I mean, I started ticking when I was 9. Obviously, my family knew about it, but we really didn't talk about it. In fact, one time I remember, I don't know, I was 13, maybe 14, who knows. I remember my mom just saying, like, "What, you know, why do you make those faces?" I said, "I don't know." And really, and from the time I was 9 until the time I was 45 and got diagnosed and started talking about it, that was really the sum total of the conversation with my family about it. And, you know, when I did get diagnosed and told my parents, of course, and, you know, I asked, you know, why didn't we do anything about this before? And, you know, my dad said, "Well, you seem to be getting along okay." And I wasn't really, at all,
right.
but that was, but I was very, I kept things to myself. You know, I was, I think, quite a lot a loner. And I didn't come home and tell my parents every day, "Yeah, I got pushed around or I got made fun of." I just kept all that shit to myself. And I always had friends. You know, I always had a small group of friends, so it wasn't like I was the loner outcast. I was not, you know, the most popular kid in school, but, you know, there's always some fringe group of outliers who also were not the popular kids, and that's where I found my home. And then, you know, as a younger adult, 20s and 30s, you know, I went to doctors. I went to neurologists. I had the EEG. I went to other psychiatrists. Not a single one of them ever mentioned the possibility of Tourette syndrome.
Okay.
And another conversation with my parents after I got diagnosed, my dad is like, well, I mean, can you forgive us for not figuring this out? And I thought, I mean, if a neurologist can't figure it out in 1990, I'm not quite sure how an aerospace engineer is going to do it in 1970,
Right. Yeah.
So, and there's nothing to forgive. There's just the state of the healthcare system and the knowledge of this thing. And then finally, when I was 45, I was actually getting an MBA, and we were rebuilding a house, and all this stuff was going on. And I was twitching like crazy. And of course, but then there was the internet, and so one night I was up late studying, and just I was just like a puppet on a string, and and my and I just Googled the tics and twitches, and everything that came up. Well, there's some articles about a day in the life, and I was just reading this article and just thinking, oh my God, that's me. That's that's exactly me. And I remember my wife was reading in bed, and I just went upstairs and put my head on her belly, and I just said, this is what I've got. And I just started to sob, and it just, I mean, it makes me cry even now, just recounting it, because there's just such a powerful moment in my life that maybe finally I knew what I had, and everything on the internet led back to what was then called the Tourette Syndrome Association. And so, I called them, and they sent me a list of doctors in the area. So I went to one, and he just sat and talked to me for 15 minutes, and then said, like, of course it's Tourette's. I mean, he said, there's nothing else it could be. And,
wow.
And I have some comorbids, but, not nothing that, affected, my ability to focus in school or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Right now, I've been, past couple of years, it's going to come out of the blue. I've had just a ton of anxiety, which I hate. It really sucks. But
did it coincide with anything, or
whether it's related or not, I don't know. But I never really had that before.
Yeah.
But so anyway, I did well in school, and besides my bachelor's, I've got a law degree and a couple master's degrees, and the doctor was looking at me, and when I said I had a law degree, he just looked visibly surprised. And I know some people with Tourette's have other things that they just don't like school, or maybe they don't do well, or they can't focus, they can't concentrate. But I was thinking that
was me.
Yeah. But I just thought, come on, there's got to be other people with Tourette's who have professional degrees. Like I'm not the only one. It's like I'm not
right.
I'm not brilliant in any sense of the word. So I do have Tourette's, but whatever. I don't have those comorbids that made that difficult for me. So
we'll be right back. The Tourette Association of America is the premier nonprofit working to raise awareness, advance research, and provide ongoing support to those with Tourette syndrome or tic disorder. With a network of over 130 chapters, support groups, and centers of excellence, the TAA engages with communities across the nation in an effort to provide tools, webinars, workshops, and support for all seeking assistance, As a primary sponsor of Tourette's podcast, the TAA supports the authentic conversations showcasing the diverse representation of the TS community. To learn more, visit Tourette.org. Tourette.org. I kind of want to go back to what you were saying about, kind of just you read the article, you were Googling, you found, you just found it. And it's like, this is what I have, no question about it. The diagnosis, there's nothing else it could be, and just bringing you to tears. You're already accomplished with your life, and, you've done a lot of great things, and, you're in it, as far as just the hierarchy of work. I mean, you're pretty advanced. What is it about just knowing, like just kind of coming to the name, the understanding of it? I mean, what's so heavy about that to you?
Oh, that's a good question. Because in some sense you would think, what doesn't matter? But in some sense, I guess it was just, there I was, 45 years old, and I've been kicking most of my life, made fun of, teased, bullied, and just knowing, I'm not just some random freak. I have an actual medical condition. It's like, the line from the Elephant Man movie, like, I am not an animal. I'm just, that was, and that continues to be just overwhelmingly powerful for me. And of course, even back then, there's more the infancy of the internet, and awareness of TS was nowhere near what it is now.
Absolutely.
So even then, like, I knew, but there wasn't a community still. And it was very funny, because I told everybody at work and a lot of my friends, and I kind of got one of three reactions. One was, "Oh, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
we love you. We don't care. Nice to have a name for it." Some people said, "Well, what ticks?" I was just thinking, like, okay, you're really haven't been paying attention to me then.
Right.
If that's your reaction. But the third one, which really cracked me up, was at least a couple of people, at least two people at work that I worked with every day, and had worked with every day for probably 4 or 5 years. They both independently said to me, "You didn't know you had Tourette's? I knew that 30 seconds after I met you."
Oh, man.
I assumed you knew that. And and both of them had people in their lives who had.
Wow.
So they were aware of it, but
yeah.
So of course they knew what it was, but of course neither one of them was going to say, "Hey, dude, do you have Tourette's?" So
that's so interesting. That I've heard that from a couple other people too, where they got diagnosed later into their adult life, but people they had interacted with at work, and just people in their lives over the years, it was just total positive to them. They assumed that the person knew. And they were already kind of up on it, so they knew how to kind of compose themselves and not ask, awkward, weird questions, and how to be respectful and everything like that. So they were already in on it, like way ahead of them.
Right.
But just assumed that, like they didn't even have to mention it. It's like, we're cool. I get it. Right. You get it. We're cool. That's so funny.
Yeah. So they knew, but I didn't know, and they never mentioned it. And I mean, these are people I worked with closely every day. So.
Yeah,
I was not expecting that reaction. that really cracked me up, actually.
That's funny, and I also like the. I guess it could be polite dishonesty of oh, I never really noticed anything, and there are in my case, when people have told me that, when certain people have told me that, I'm like, that's totally not true. There are other people in my life, the frequency that I've seen them, maybe I haven't been very ticky at all. Like my best friend since I was a kid, tics have never been really anything. When I say a kid, like high school, but he's never really seen anything that would make him kind of remark on it. We never really talked about it with each other, but I don't know. I think he also kind of gets that TS is more than just tics, and there's a lot to go along with it too. And, your personality is absolutely, kind of rounded by it. And I think that's really cool, kind of being at your level and having that sense of, I could be misunderstood. Maybe other people in my life or people around me, I maybe shouldn't be so quick to judge them and their lives, or at least, that's the exercise that I've kind of gone through since really kind of coming into awareness about Tourette syndrome in my life. And I mean, is that kind of part of how you kind of conduct yourself professionally, and kind of the message that you're trying to kind of convey with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I spend a lot of time at work talking about, the organization's culture and treating people with respect, and everybody has something, and if you had 100 people in the room and you asked them to stand up but then sit down, if they know somebody with cancer or Parkinson's or hearing loss or epilepsy or Crohn's disease, I mean, everybody in the room would be sitting down. Everybody, whether it's grandparents with a pacemaker or hearing aids, or everybody knows somebody and loves somebody who has some kind of condition that makes them different.
Right.
And so, to me, it's a lot of it became really eye-opening about, you can't assume stuff about anybody, and as a leader, everybody has a story, and I don't want to be treated any differently because I've got Tourette's. I just want to be left alone to do my job the best I can do it. And same goes for somebody who has depression or anxiety, and or a heart condition or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And a lot of people where I work have a lot of those things, and those are the ones who are just open with me about it.
Right.
So
yeah.
You can't walk through the day, treating people like a jerk when you don't know what's going on in their lives. And Tourette's is just part of that. So, if anything, Tourette's I think it's taught me just a great deal of empathy. And to me, that is the single most important trait that you need to be a leader. So,
yes,
I think Tourette's has given me so many gifts that make me a better leader. I mean, it's just hard to count all of them, from empathy to honesty and transparency. There's just a whole list that, and I wonder if I didn't have Tourette's, would I have those gifts? I'd like to think I would, but I don't know. I just, I can't separate the Tourette's from the rest of my life. So.
Well, I mean, what you said is so true, and there are studies that support the ideas of a more diverse workplace it'll be a happier workplace, but it'll also you'll have ideas, and there's more, I guess, value kind of in the human resources when you're kind of bringing. You mentioned people in different circumstances of life, and those circumstances of life are going to help them to kind of see from an angle that maybe I'm not able to see. And I might think my judgment is okay, and I'm kind of cool with everybody, and I'm an accepting, inclusive person. But I may not understand the perspectives of every last person I would call my friend. And it's just important to hear those perspectives and make people feel comfortable and valued enough to kind of raise their voices as such. I'm lucky that my day job workplace is like that. It's really cool that everybody I think does feel kind of involved in the big decision, but just what you can get from, especially in leadership, kind of understanding that is, I mean, you could run a really amazing department kind of having that mindset as leadership. And that's really awesome, Jerry.
And I think in a lot of ways, neurodiversity is maybe, I don't want to say the final frontier, but the latest frontier of that, racial, gender, those sorts of things talked about for years, but gender identity is becoming a much bigger topic lately. But just neurodiversity, people think differently, and people are wired differently.
Yeah.
And if you're neurotypical and you don't have an understanding of what people whose brains work differently bring to the equation, then you're definitely leaving a lot of talent on the table.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And making people feel left out when they have something to contribute. So,
and I think getting unique talents from people who, I'm not me personally, not the most social person. I participate in things, but I'm not the person who's, hey, let's go have a beer. Come on, everybody. I'm just not that person. But I do feel like I have, kind of something to offer, even if I'm not the most, kind of socially advanced member of the workplace. I think there's a lot of pressure to kind of be loud and not be loud, but just that there's kind of a modern office environment kind of thing that doesn't always, it sounds progressive, but it doesn't always bring everybody along or include everybody.
No, absolutely. And I'm the same way. I mean, like I said, I'll give speeches to thousands of people. I don't care, but at heart, I'm an introvert. I'm not going to a bar somewhere afterwards to hang out with people more. For one thing, I don't drink, and so that's boring for me. But I'm going to be in my room, my hotel room or something, with the TV off, reading a book or something. But one-on-one, I'll go meet with anybody and have great conversations.
Yep.
It gets into the whole networking and just, and even if you're asking for feedback on something, what do you think of this proposal? And you just ask that in a meeting. Some people aren't going to respond in the meeting.
Right. Yeah.
Because they're not comfortable doing that. So you have to give people other ways of putting their input into something without making them say it in front of everybody if they don't want to do that. And I think, some people get into this person never says anything. They never contribute. But you're not giving them a way to contribute that works for them. So
yeah, it's
we've kind of gotten into leadership theory here.
But no, it's true that you were kind of starting by saying that neurodiversity and the discussions of that and recognition of that in the workplace is kind of like the next frontier, and I agree. And to kind of when you let people kind of work to their strengths, and the schedule of the day, the 9 to 5 or 8:30 to 6 or whatever it is, isn't quite so rigid. And I think about that a lot with like kids going to school too, where they have to get up at like 5 a.m. to get to the bus. And like, I don't have kids, but I mean, I'm kind of familiar with that. It's just, it doesn't seem like the schedule that we work is necessarily aligned with our own individual strengths. And kind of giving people, understanding that people's brains are wired differently, as you said, and kind of giving people the sort of permission to let that ride so they can do their best work in the most comfortable way. I mean, just imagine if that is encouraged in some places, but the whole world hasn't caught up to that. What I do worry about sometimes is that in the push for that kind of thing, sometimes there's the backlash of like, oh, well, this is just the next thing that we're supposed to be sensitive about. I think sometimes it takes a little bit extra to kind of wrap the mind around the mind to the point where you understand that people should probably have more freedom to be themselves in the workplace. And
no, I think that's true. We first at work, we have this. There's always a back and forth about telework, and there's so many managers like, if I don't see you at your desk, you're not working. And I just think,
hate that.
Oh, how quaint. Or, our email system has a chat function, and if you're on your computer, the little green light shows up, and I can't tell you how many complaints I get. Oh, my bosses want us to make sure the green light is on. It's like, really? That's the laziest leadership ever. For one thing, I'm sure you could go on Amazon right now and buy a little device that you put over your mouse that jiggles the mouse so the green light stays on while you're sitting there with your feet up, streaming Game of Thrones. So it's a totally irrelevant measure. And to me, the bottom line is the work done? If the work is done, I tell my staff, if the work is done, I don't care if you did it at 10 o'clock in a federal office, if you did it at midnight in your bunny slippers, if you did it in a Starbucks on the far side of the moon. I could give a shit. When did work become a place instead of an activity? To me, work is the activity. Get the activity done. I don't care about the place. And I think another point.
I totally agree.
Yeah, and I'm a minority voice on that, I have to say. But again, I think as you get to more, as neurodiversity becomes more of a thing, or if more people are willing to acknowledge, they have depression or anxiety. Anxiety, I think, is the most treated either mental or medical condition. I'm not sure which in the United States, say. So lots of people have anxiety. Sometimes it's just easier on those bad days to work from home. And if you're more accepting of, the fact that this person is, perfectly functional, even with anxiety. So I don't care. I'm going to let them work at home because they're going to get the work done without the stress of having to face the world. If we get to that acceptance of neurodiversity, I think some of that may change. And I really think there's strength in numbers. And if you use a 1 in 100 figure, there's 8 billion people in the world. So that's like 80 million people with Tourette's. And if there's a country, it would be, I think, if I remember, because I looked it up, 20th biggest country or something between Germany and Thailand in population. And, Tourettistan is a very big place. And if you add in the people with ADHD or anxiety or depression or any of these things that might generally be lumped together as some kind of otherness or, if those groups work together and stick together, I think we can be an incredible voice for the acceptance of, one, who we are, and two, what we have. Because, I have Tourette's, it doesn't define me. But also for changing the world to make it easier for people with these different conditions to live their best lives. So, and maybe I'm naive, but I really do. I really do believe that. And, really with the growth of the internet and the different support groups out there, I mean, so many more people know about Tourette's than did before. And, I gave a speech back in May to a group, there's a couple hundred people there. And I started off by saying that I had Tourette's. And I just asked, the group, other than me, how many people know somebody who has Tourette syndrome? Probably 10 or 12 people raised their hands, which isn't huge out of a group of 200.
Mm.
But I just thought it was pretty interesting. And if I'd done that 10 years ago, I'm not sure if I would have even had that many people. Because I just think the awareness has just exploded, I think, in the past decade.
It's totally true. It's such a nice place to kind of come together now and find these, support groups and chat rooms. And it's funny, I just looked it up while you were talking. It looks like it would go like France, United Kingdom, Thailand, Tourettistan, Iran.
Here we go. I mean,
so yeah, it looks like it would be somewhere between the 19th and 20th biggest country in the world. Yeah, it's not bad.
It's not bad, and I'm such a nerd that I figured that out at one point, and and it was kind of stunning, because if you're growing up somewhere and you don't know, you don't know what it's about. Obviously, it's very isolating. It can be very isolating. I think that's been a theme that runs through these podcasts. I mean, everybody has relationships with people of one kind or another, but there's also a little bit of a theme of isolation and loneliness. And I just think that knowing that there's not many of us out there in the world, I mean, that's a significant number, and that's comforting to me. Anyway,
I'm looking at the list, and it's kind of shocking that Tourettistan would only be like 18 ranks behind, 18 places behind China.
Yeah, well, if you look at world populations, like China, India, the United States, and like it just drops off quickly from there.
Still, it's a good posse, good number of people. That's an Olympic country.
Yes, it is. We could feel the team.
I want to give you the floor at the end. If there's anything else that you want to say that we didn't hit or something we got away from, just feel free. Anything you'd like to say.
Well, I would just, I guess, go back to what I said toward the beginning. If there's anybody out there, of course, I know people around the world listen to this, but, particularly if you're in the United States and the federal government, and Tourette's you have Tourette's and it's a problem in your work, get a hold of me. We'll talk. Like I might not have great solutions, but I've been through it, and more or less I've survived it. I mean, I've had periods in my career where I've sort of been in exile, so I've had ups and downs, but I've been at the top for almost 2 decades, and Tourette's or no. So, and I've had one-on-one meetings with cabinet secretaries, and I still wonder how the hell did I get where I am. It just seems improbable. But one way or another, or for whatever reason, the Tourette's largely did not stop me from getting to where I wanted to get to. And, my staff all knows. Well, I what I will say is the minute I got diagnosed, back then, I was changing jobs within the same department at the time. And, literally within I think a couple months of when I got diagnosed. So first day on the new job, first thing, staff meeting with all the staff. first thing out of my mouth, just want you to know, I've got Tourette Syndrome. And I knew a lot of the people anyway, when we're in the same organization. It was my first time as their boss. I've got Tourette Syndrome. You know that I tick. I know that you're going to see me tick. I just want you to know it doesn't hurt. And it's not contagious. And if there's anything you want to know about it, feel free to ask me. And it was just so liberating to be able to take that off the table. And I've basically done that every time I start a new job since. Or even if I'm giving a speech like to a bunch of people that I don't know, I do. I didn't do it this year because I had some health issues, but most years I do some talks for Native American Heritage Month.
Nice.
Usually at other federal agencies, and they don't know me. So if I walk in, that's one of the first things I say, just so that people know. And so when I'm up there ticking, I say, "What the hell's wrong with this guy?" And just get distracted by that. So for me, it's just it just takes it off the table and just lets me be who I am. And my staff, if I got a minute, I'll tell a story. I think
absolutely, yeah. As much time as you want.
I think I told it before, but just recently, we just have a great team where I work, and absolutely love the people there who work for me. And we were getting ready to we're doing some videos, of course, like some new employee orientation videos. And part of it, they were just doing a short video of me just talking into the camera, welcoming new employees, blah, blah, blah. And I looked at the film of me, and I just said, this looks like, a pack of hamsters just fighting under my face. This is horrifying. Like, we can't use this film, and my staff is just like, yeah, that's what we see every day. So just shut up. It doesn't matter. And just so I would say for me, it just, especially since I've been open about it. The acceptance from most people that I work with has just been so heartwarming. And I know there's people out there who keep it hidden as best they can, and I understand. If I walk into an auditorium or something, even now, it's like I'm back in college, and I will sit in the back row on one edge or the other, because that's the place that nobody else in there can see me, and the person talking can only see me if they look that direction.
Right.
That's what I did in college, to hide it. And I will still do that today if I walk into a place. So, but I would just say, people who are hiding it, it's your choice. Everybody's got to make the choice. I will just say, for me, life got a lot better when I was open about it.
Thanks for listening. Grateful to Jerry for sharing his wisdom, especially on leadership and how to run a better workplace with a stronger and more confident staff. That's what I got out of it. Also, my wife, who's a Native American, pointed out that it's awesome to have Native representation in Jerry. Again, he's with the Sioux Ste. Marie Chippewa tribe. Jerry mentioned that he wants to hear from more government officials or professional leaders with TS. I mean, I'm sure he'd be happy to hear from anybody who wants to talk about this stuff, but anyway, if you're getting together a group of federal employees with TS or for any other reason that you'd like to contact him, I will link to his Twitter account in the show notes with this episode at tourettespodcast.com. Looking at upcoming events from our sponsor, the Tourette Association of America at tourette.org. There's that free webinar we've been talking about coming right up January 7th, ADHD and Tourette Syndrome, which go together like coffee and donuts, though not always so enjoyable. This is a free webinar that will discuss the diagnostic criteria for ADHD and how the clinical presentation of ADHD presents from the preschool years to adulthood. It'll also cover the co-occurrence of ADHD, tics, and related comorbid disorders and the treatment options and issues associated with co-occurring ADHD and tics. Go to tourette.org, that's tourette.org, and click on Attend an Event, and you'll see the links to this webinar and other opportunities leading up to the National Day of Advocacy in Washington, D.C. It's on March 4th, and on to the TAA National Conference in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and that's coming up in May. I'm always retweeting events from Tourette's Action in the UK and Tourette Canada and various other Tourette organizations and chapters and so on. @TourettesPod is my handle on Twitter. Thanks to the Tourette Association for being the primary sponsor of this podcast, making it possible and bringing it to new people. Thank you, Amanda and Megan and the rest of the team. You can learn about them and the work they do at tourette.org. That's tourette.org. Another quick plug for treatingtourettetogether.org. Look at what's happening with Tourette research and how you can play a part in where it goes. treatingtourettetogether.org. Tourette's podcast is part of the Geeks Rising Network, www.geeksrising.com. where you can find an amazing roster of podcasts about well-being and education and technology and pop culture. Tourette's podcast is proud to be part of Geeks Rising. Just looking over, and I'm still waiting on replies from our giveaway winners, so maybe we'll be left in suspense here this week. I'll definitely have updates on social media when I know something. Again, @Tourette'sPod on Twitter. Look us up on Instagram, and you can also go to patreon.com/Tourette'sPodcast if Tourette's Podcast has helped you and you'd like to offer a small bit of support. patreon.com/Tourette'sPodcast. Tourette'sPodcast@gmail.com to reach me about anything you want. You can also contact me through Tourette'sPodcast.com. My name's Ben, this is Tourette's Podcast, and we'll see you with a new episode next week, and we'll be talking to you in the interim. All right,